before the launching of the scheme, official launching of the scheme, did you interact with either the accused persons in the dock or the winning bidder, Black Deck Private Limited?
When I joined the ministry, Black Deck was already, had already signed the contract.
Yes.
So we had many interactions before the launch. Firstly, my first interaction was to discuss the price, because at that time we realized that the price was quite high. So our first meeting, my interaction with them was to discuss the price.
We in particular took place in the discussion on behalf of the winning bidder.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Who in particular took part on behalf of the winning bidder, took part in the meetings, the discussion for the price?
I remember there were 3 gentlemen. The accused were there, but plus 1 other. And then my director, livestock, and the officials from the ministry.
For the avoidance of doubt, which 2 accused persons are you referring to?
Mr. Mpofu and Mr. Chimombe.
Yes. So what was the nature of the negotiation on the pricing around the issue of the price that you held with the 2?
So when I joined the ministry in April, immediately we got instruction that we need to renegotiate the price because it was too high. So we called them in to try and get the price down.
Yes.
Which is
can you
what
pause?
we did.
Okay. You can pause there. Yes, which you did. Proceed.
So then the negotiations, which we really were mutual, we then reduced the price, leading to an addendum, which was also done in April.
I see. Now, from the supplier side, who was heading the team?
As a new person, I think I wouldn't know who really was leading at that time, but I know that both of them, Mr. Chimombe and Mr. Mpofu, would be leading the discussions.
It's there. You said I think you mentioned the date as to when these discussions were taking place. Did you?
It was in mid-April.
In April, isn't it?
Early April.
Which year?
2022.
Okay.
Just after I joined the ministry.
I see.
And then okay, thank you. Proceed.
Now, Professor, were you in attendance when these meetings were being held, personally?
Yes, the price negotiation I was there, but there were many meetings, some with my director responsible for their department. So some meetings I was there, some meetings obviously the responsible directors would negotiate and do those meetings.
Did you get to know the positions of the two accused persons with regard to the winning bidder? What positions they held? The capacity in which they were attending the meetings?
In Black Deck, no. Because I would just say call the Black Deck for a meeting, then they would come.
Right.
I wouldn't know which position they held in their company.
Now, after the price negotiation, if you may go on from there, with regards to the supply of the goods, what happened?
After the price negotiations, we were now preparing for the launch. So we wanted the goods so that we can do the launch. So obviously, launching it, we wanted to see the physical goods because the president was going to launch the program. So we then started to inquire where the goods were, which led us to them disclosing that they mobilized about 32,500 goods in various areas in the country. Yes. So we then sent a team to verify, which we could not find the goods.
What's there? You said you were told that there were 32,500 by who?
By Black Deck.
Now, was there any particular person within Black Deck that you were communicating with?
Yeah, not to me, but I would send the director responsible to communicate with the Black Deck now to find the boss.
So what was the result of the verification exercise?
We then realized that the places that we were given where the goats were supposed to be there were no goats, which led us to try and do more, because in the ministry we do have presence in every ward, so it's very easy for us to verify if there is anything in any ward. Yes.
The outcome of the exercise? Were any goats located?
I think some very few goats were located. I think about 3,000 or so out of the 32,500 which were said, but the only verification was that there were some goats, about 3,000.
Yes. Did you engage the supplier with regards to the outstanding goats, since you had been promised that there were 32,500 goats and only about 3,000 goats were accounted for?
Yes, we would engage them several times. I think at one point I then said it's now over a month ever since we said there are 32,000. These goats have given birth, it means we now have more out there. So yes, there were several engagements.
the quantity of goods eventually went up from the one that had been verified as being around 3,000?
No, we did not increase.
What eventually happened?
The launch went ahead in Chipinge, and we launched with some boats. I'm not sure of the actual quantity now for Chipinge, but the launch went ahead.
Yes.
Thereafter, of course, we were now supposed to distribute across the country, distributing the boats.
Yes.
We then realized that there were less and less boats going to the places where we would want to be distributing. That is what led us to raise alarm to say maybe the mobilization was not done, and maybe the capacity of Black Deck to deliver the goods in the contract was
Yes,
not.
you said we realized that you said there were less and less goods to be distributed, and
Yes.
we realized
that maybe there was no mobilization of goods as had been initially indicated.
yes.
What then happened?
So
Just a minute.
Proceed.
So we continued with the program, re-engaging Black Deck so that we can distribute. So in some places you would get 400, sometimes you won't get anything until about June 2023. That's when we really needed the goods there. And at these places where we needed the goods, we then realized maybe Black Deck did not have capacity. So I think at one point the goods that were supplied in one place were just very, very small, which led us to really become uncomfortable with the performance of Black Deck.
Go on. What then happened?
When we realized that there were difficulties in the launch in 2022, we then initiated the process to cancel the contract, which we did. Of course, there were objections, but then we said we need the goods because already money had been paid, which had been paid in April, May, June 2022, which amounted to over 7.7 million. At that time, it was equivalent to about 86,000 goods, which we thought would have been bought and then supplied.
Wait a second. 7.7, about 7.7
million USD.
USD, equivalent to how many goods?
About 86,000.
Yes, proceed.
So, but then we said proceed to supply goods and we would engage them and re-engage, because we believed at that time that yes, we needed the votes. That's what we needed. So the engagement is continuing, despite the fact that we had said maybe this contract is not worth it. We continue to engage. However, by June 2023, we realized that this was not going to really happen. So the goats became smaller, the goats would not be supplied, and the contract was not performing.
When was that? When you realized that it was not working?
From August 2022 to June, July 2023, we were trying to really engage and negotiate and assist each other.
Who were you engaging with specifically?
Black Deck, Mr. Chimombe, Mr. We would meet, of course, for example, at Chipinge, when there was the launch of the campaign, prior to elections, they brought us. Then we would engage and talk and plan for the next place to be delivered. So we continuously engage both of them. They would be available, especially at those launches.
So eventually, how many goats were supplied for the project?
From September, the launch to date, I think less than 4,500.
Would you know whether the outstanding balance from the money that had been paid in advance, whether it was recovered? Since you said because we are not supplied.
No money was recovered.
I have no further questions for the witness, my lord.
Cross-examination on behalf of the first accused.
Thank you very much, my lord. Would I be correct to say, as the chief director responsible for architects, this was your project? You were the key person for this project?
My department, of course, was responsible, but the key person was the head of the department of livestock development.
So I just want to understand the hierarchy of how the ministry works with this project. Would I be correct to say the overall accounting officer was the overall one in charge?
The permanent secretary, yes, would be the accounting officer, accounting for all resources in the ministry. And then the chief director would head the particular department. And in the particular department, there will be sub-departments, livestock development being one of them. It's led by a director.
Okay. And the chief director in this particular circumstance was yourself?
Correct.
when you joined the ministry, you obviously acquainted yourself with the fact with what had happened that had led to the contract to have been signed. That's correct?
Yeah, that is correct. And, my initial interaction was the price negotiation.
You had to look into how what had led to the contract, like whether or not there had been a bid and who had participated in the bid and who you had signed the contract with.
Yes, I appointed myself.
Who had been awarded the bid?
A Black Deck.
By Black Deck, you mean Black Deck Private Limited?
Well, we called it Black Deck Private Limited, but on further look, there will be other stages of that name. Black Deck Poultry, but we called it Black Deck. It meant the same thing.
Okay, so will I be correct if I say the contract, in fact, from the bid had been awarded to Black Deck Private Limited, otherwise also known as other things, also known as Black Deck, also known to you as Black Deck Poultry, Livestock and Livestock Farming.
Yes, correct.
According to you, Black Deck Private Limited was at that material time when you joined the ministry and when it conducted the bid, was a registered entity.
I know that when we started to inquire about the goats, Black Deck was the company that came to attend the meetings.
You saw the company documents in respect of Black Deck Private Limited as a company in the bid documents, correct?
That is not correct. The chief director's responsibility is not to look at those company documents. But there is a process which goes where those verifications are done.
So you did not have a chance to look at whether or not in the bid that the company you were dealing with was a registered entity.
At that time that I joined the ministry, the contract had already been signed, and it was not necessary for me to go and dig to say, was this done in this way or so, because there is a process which happens until a contract is awarded. So it was not necessary for me to look for those documents.
So in a nutshell, you did not look into the documents?
No.
You did not acquaint yourself to see who you were dealing with. To say, am I dealing with a registered company? Am I dealing with so and so?
It is not necessary at that point it was not necessary for me to do that, because already the process that had led to the award of the contract would interrogate what you are inquiring.
Wait, Mr. Jetel. Yes, Mr. Jetel.
Yes. So, you had occasion also to relate to the contract.
Yes.
What were the material terms of that contract? According to
They were supposed to, the contract value was 87 million. They were supposed to supply the boats in tranches over a 5-year period, 126,000 a year. There were 4.
Pause there.
try to watch the bank's pens so that they can be able to record what you're saying.
How many a year?
About 126,000 a year. The total number of boats over the 5-year period was supposed to be 632,001. And at that time, they were supposed to be paid 30% upfront, payable in $0.
Yes.
You were supposed to be paid by whom? The 30%.
Treasury through the Ministry of Agriculture, of course.
How much was that 30%? Would that be correct if I say it was going to be 26,327,150?
36?
26,327.
Not 26 million.
26 million.
26 million.
$26,327,150.40.
Should be correct. You are reading about 26 million.
I tried to do the math, although I am not so good at math. So you said they were supposed to be paid upfront. What do you mean by upfront?
At that time, there was an opportunity for a bidder to get 30% of their contract value, to which was called the mobilization fee. So that 30% is a mobilization fee.
Contractual is going to be involved in the mobilization?
Well, it was supposed to be to enable the contractor to kickstart the program. So, in their case, it's a construction of holding pens.
Please launch the green screen.
Like holding pens.
Holding pens, among other things. I think there are several, but also including the purchase of goods.
Yes, so it would also include hiring of employees.
I'm not quite sure, but I guess so.
The holding pens were to be constructed nationwide in anticipation that obviously the deliveries will be done throughout the whole nation.
Yes, particularly in each province, because when we then were asking about where the goods were, the indications were that there was a hold in place in each province.
Wait a second. Yes, proceed, Mr. General.
Yes, one would also expect that one would need a large quantity or reservoir of veterinary medicines to attend to the costs that would be anticipated to be bought. Correct?
I am not sure about that.
Would you not have anticipated to have received the whole reports from elected practices?
Of course, we would not want sick people in courts. We would want the old ones.
So it would be reasonable for elected for it to factor into the 30% to say would anticipate that would give veterinary care to the courts that would be purchasing.
Certainly.
Deep tanks for the courts would also be factored into the cost.
Ordinarily, in Zimbabwe, deep tanks for goats are not common. So if you put the vitamins, veterinary medicines, those would suffer.
Transportation, one should have been expected to have made provision for transportation of various, both from various centers, logistics. Would have been included into this cost.
Certainly yes, because they were supposed to mobilize to the holding center.
One would also have been expected to have had at least even agents all over the nation to have a staff complement of so many people because you will be buying goods from so many people.
I guess so, yes.
So of this 30% that the minister was supposed to pay and as mobilization fees, there was no formula in terms of the contract as to what ratio or portion would go to logistics, for example, or would go to construction of pens. Is that correct?
I cannot confirm that, although during the engagements, the issue of construction of pens would come up, but we were more concerned with getting boats. The other issues of the mobilization did not come through at that stage.
Yes.
Yes, of course. I understand the anticipation from the ministry. You'd say, oh, if we pay this 30%, we want what's that is very reasonable. But what I wanted to get from you is confirmation that of that 30% that we have agreed was supposed to be paid to Blackdeck Private Limited. One would not say, for example, that Blackdeck Private Limited breached the contract if it took a whole chunk of it towards construction of pens.
Not really. The larger chunk of the mobilization was to mobilize the boats. In June 2022, that was the push in August. And in August 2022, Treasury then removed the 30% requirement and said all contracts that that 30% must now be used to ensure that the actual goods are delivered.
Before we get there, I'm still talking of the contract. Before you started even negotiations, you come to the ministry and you find a contract signed. Was the contract providing for how the funds were supposed to be distributed of that 30%?
I cannot confirm that it was detailed like that.
Okay. Now, was the 30% paid upfront as required by the contract to Blackdeck Private?
Only 7.7 was paid.
And this would equate to less than 10%.
Yes.
Of that 10% that was paid, it did not have conditions to say this portion must go towards construction of the pens, or this must go towards veterinary, this one must go towards purchase of vehicles. Correct?
In our discussions after they were paid, we were really assisting each other to try and have boats to launch. So we did never discuss about proportions of going to each. Our understanding at that stage was that now that you've been paid something, let's have boats to kickstart the program.
So your answer is yes, there was no proportion which was coming with conditions on it.
That might need to be checked in the actual contract, but because I was also new at that stage, and I remember our negotiations were mainly focused on mobilization of the boats.
I would therefore be correct wouldn't I, to say that this 30% was meant to capacitate elected private limited to perform in terms of the contract, this upfront payment.
It was a mobilization fee. That is what I understood. Kickstart the program. Capacitation, I would review.
So when you say kickstarting, you are saying it would bankroll things, it would trigger things to start happening after payment of the 30%.
Not necessarily payment of 30%. Any payment which was done, we were supposed now to be getting in court. The original launch date was actually supposed to be June, and the understanding then was we have got, which is what we were told because we were there.
I'm talking about the contract and the 30%. To say what was its use, what was its purpose in the contract. You had indicated kick-starting. So I was following up on that meaning of the word kick-starting. To say when the contract was invised and when that clause was put in the contract to say the ministry is supposed to pay 30% upfront, it is consistent with your term to say it would then kickstart the mobilization. Am I wrong?
Well, I think it could be a matter of semantics. The matter is that when the 30% is paid, it was supposed to ensure that the program doesn't fail.
The program doesn't
Fail to take off.
Conversely, if the 30% was not paid, the program would fail, would be doomed to fail to take off. Would you agree with me?
No, I wouldn't agree.
The contract was a 5-year contract, correct?
Correct.
And would I be correct to then say when the 30% clause was put in, the kind of mobilization that would be expected, the kind of kickstarting a project that would be expected would be to put in place infrastructures that would cater or carry through the whole project for the 5 years?
Not really. When we started to engage each other after the payment was done, we were really looking at what we call contract management, because when a contract is awarded, as in this case, it's not left to the supplier to then just supply. You engage so that you see where is what, which is why at that moment when the payment was done, we would then congregate and say, so, where are these goods? The understanding would be if they were in those places, they would be what we send us constructed and so forth. But the contract management entails that the contractor and ourselves would be doing, would be knowing what each other is doing.
I'm not yet at the contract management. I'm still at the contract. You come into office, you see a contract. You try to understand what is the motive for the contract. Why are they this close before you start even negotiating? That is what I would have expected. Is that what you did?
We were not negotiating. the only negotiation we did was on the price, which is what led to the addendum. After that, we were now together mobilizing for the boards to launch. So it's not whether you want to call it management or working together, we were really engaging each other to ensure that boards are available for the order.
Wait there. Proceed, Mr. Jotero.
Yes, in its bid, Black Deck Private Limited had indicated that it would require 70% to be paid upfront. You are aware of that?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Which it then won the tender, and it was awarded that tender, and that amount was then agreed to be reduced to 30% as an upfront payment. You are aware of that?
No, I'm not aware of that.
In the engagements that you then thereafter had with Black Deck Private Limited, it also indicated the difficulties that came with the failure of the ministry to pay the 30% as the ministry was obliged in terms of the contract. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct. The ingredients that we bought from our supplier is that some goods were already mobilized.
They did not request for the ministry to pay the 30%.
When the first payment was done, when we were begging them, the indications were that the 32,500 is already mobilized.
No, I'm not talking about the 32,000. We'll get there, Prof.
I'm also getting there.
No, you must answer my questions.
I'm answering your question. Allow me to explain.
No, Prof. I'll allow you to explain when I want you to explain. I just want you to be with me, Prof, in my question. I'm not yet at the 32,500. I'll get there. I'm just saying, did Black Deck Private Limited ever not communicate to your ministry, or did they ever demand that the ministry is supposed to pay 30%? It has not paid 30%. It's bound to pay 30% and it must pay 30%.
I am not aware of that request.
And the requests were done in writing and by letters. You are not aware of that?
I am not aware whether at that stage that request was made.
I'll get to the So, but in a nutshell, the ministry did not pay 30% upfront.
You know,
It did not. So the ministry breached the contract from the very onset. Would you agree with me?
I will not say that.
Right. The ministry also indicated to you, Black Deck Private Limited also indicated to your office the difficulties it was facing due to the fact that it was receiving amounts in Zimbabwean dollars instead of United States dollars?
The contract was supposed to be payable in Zimbabwe dollars.
No, my question is, did they communicate? I'm not saying this is what was supposed to happen, but I'm just saying, did they not communicate that?
I don't remember if they communicated that.
Right? When you felt aggrieved, you were aware that the contract had means in which an aggrieved person would have those issues addressed?
Yes.
What were the means?
First is to engage and help each other, because our motive was to ensure that we perform more on the contract, both of us. The business that we were doing were really for that purpose, to ensure that we understand what was happening and also offer assistance wherever we can. So that was the first thing to ensure that the contract performs.
So this was in line with clause 18 of the agreement. Of the contract, which you can have with that.
Yes.
It also relates that when you have failed to find each other, you would then approach arbitration proceedings. Correct?
Yes, correct.
You have not approached any arbitration proceedings as you speak, correct?
Correct.
Right. Let's go now to the verification that your ministry did. How many days did that process take?
I don't remember the exact number of days.
If I say 2 days,
I don't remember.
and what was the feedback?
The feedback was that there were no boats out there as it indicated. I remember at that time they listed the number of boats in each province, which were now supposed to be verified. So teams went out there, and the teams that went out before that they are also ministry personnel already in this one. So it's very easy for us to verify that.
The report was that they could not locate the farms where the goats were. Is that not correct?
Correct.
So is it not a different thing to say that we have failed to locate the farms?
I would not say failing to locate a farm, but I would say failing to locate the boats that were saved in particular places. In some of the provinces, they would actually get in this one. So some were actually very specific to the boats.
You once gave a report to ZAC on the 13th of June 2024.
2024.
Yes, it's 1,800 hours.
Vero, can we take a brief adjournment? There are technical issues to be attended to. Mr. Ajay, we'll take a brief adjournment. There are technical issues with the recording and the setup, which has to be attended to. So you can step down and wait until the technical problem has been attended to. We'll take a brief adjournment. Court adjourns.